I'm biased against killing babies, okay? I don't think it's right when Hamas militants do it. I don't think it's right when Israel does it by the tenfold, okay? As far as I understand, people keep telling me that the ground invasion is starting. But while the ground invasion is starting, and we will talk about that, there is one thing I need to show you. This is from GDF, who is very good. Okay. Why Israel deliberately targets civilians. This is important to understand because it is open policy.
Israel typically goes to great lengths to downplay their targeting of civilians. The usual pattern is the Israeli Defense Ministry will claim that they're firing with precision and avoiding civilian casualties at all costs, and further, that any civilian casualties documented are a result of Hamas human sacrifice via human shields. However, following the devastating surprise attack on Israel last Saturday, the Israeli establishment has taken a noticeable and seismic turn. On Tuesday, the IDF spokesman, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, stated flatly, "The emphasis is on damage and not on accuracy." An unnamed defense official told Israel's Channel 13, "Gaza will eventually turn into a city of tents. There will be no buildings." Benjamin Netanyahu has called on Gazan residents to leave, and that he will operate forcefully everywhere. And due to Israel enforcing a total blockade, on top of the already existing land, air, and sea blockade that has existed for 16 grueling years, Gazans are unable to flee to Israel, so they sought to go to Egypt. But on Tuesday afternoon, the Israeli Air Force repeatedly bombed their only way out at Rafah crossing. That crossing remains closed, and Egypt is now pleading with Israel to stop bombing it in order to let in aid. Most people are taking shelter in schools operated by the UN. Sewage facilities have been hit, leaving solid waste accumulating in the streets. The Jabalia refugee camp, according to the Associated Press, has been razed to the ground. The camp had a population of 100,000 in just 1/2 of 1 square mile. Its population density was higher than that of Manila, the highest of any city in the world. Of course, this happens every few years. The last major offensive of this magnitude was the Operation Protective Edge in 2014, which destroyed 18,000 homes and killed over 2,000 people. Majority civilian, but you already knew that. Today I wanted to not only comment on the current situation, I wanted to go over the strategy that Israel is pursuing. It is their usual one, the deliberate targeting of civilians. Though this story is usually heavily suppressed, which is why it's vitally important to use my favorite media tool called Ground News. It shows you the political and corporate media bias.
My man did a decent job of segueing at the top of the hour, and his ad break is coming for you, just like mine is coming for you as well. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky. Here's a 3-minute ad break now.
Bias in the headlines that you see. And you can use it now by going to ground.news/GDF at the link on the screen now or in the description and comments. Let me just show you how it works. So right now we're talking about the current war in Gaza. I can just type that in. It gives you data on how many news sources have covered the story and the political affiliations of those outlets. It even tells you who owns the publication and whether they're a wealthy family. Super fascinating and also very important information. Using their map feature, you can read from more than 50,000 sources around.
Yes, I covered the hate crime that happened in Illinois. I covered the 6-year-old that was stabbed to death 26 times by his landlord, the authorities are investigating as a anti-Islamic, Islamophobic hate crime. Yes. The mother was also stabbed. I don't know if I do not know if the press, like what is it called when you talk to the media, like the father who is supposed to talk to the media soon. I don't know if he's done it yet.
Around the world, getting local perspectives from different countries. I'm very passionate about media criticism, and a tool like this is honestly vitally important for all my viewers. Go to ground.news/GDF to stay
It's anti-Islamophobia. It's anti-Islam. It's Islamophobic. It's an Islamophobic hate crime, most likely.
informed on breaking news as it's happening around the world. Subscribe through my link for as little as $1 a month or get 30% off unlimited access. The story begins in 2006, when Israel and Lebanon were fighting a brutal conflict, which killed thousands, and ultimately ended in Israel's embarrassing defeat. Military affairs analyst Bill Arkin even called it a failure. Israel overestimated the purity of its intelligence and the efficacy of its strategy and technology, and underestimated Hezbollah's skill and resilience. The psychological effect that this loss had on the Israeli establishment was palpable. Since the earliest days of the
By the way, anytime Israel is dealt with Lebanon or the Lebanese, I need you to understand something. It has not been good. Look up Sabra and Shatila if you want more information, where the Israeli government openly sent in Christian militias under the Lebanese forces into a refugee camp full of Muslims, Palestinians, and then basically did not allow anyone to get out. All they did was stood by and waited for them to be fucking ethnically cleansed, okay? Christian fascist militias went in. They knew full well that the Christian fascist militias were going to go in and kill all of these, like, actual straight up, not only just civilians, but like literally civilians that were refugees at this point. In the city of Beirut, it was Palestinians and Lebanese Shias perpetrated by the Christian fascist militias. The killings were carried out in Beirut's Sabra neighborhood and in the adjacent Shatila refugee camp. 2 days earlier, on the 14th of September, Lebanese politician Bashir Gemayel had been assassinated, prompting the Phalangists to call for a revenge attack. From approximately 6 p.m. on the 16th of September to 8 a.m. on the 18th of September, the Lebanese forces carried out a massacre while the IDF had the Palestinian camp surrounded. The IDF had ordered the militia to clear out the fighters of the PLO from Sabra and Shatila as a part of a larger Israeli maneuver into western Beirut. As the massacre unfolded, the IDF received reports of atrocities being committed, but did not take any action to stop it. And that's the Wikipedia page. The reality is they did take action, just not to stop it. The only action they took was to shut off the entire neighborhood to ensure that the Palestinian children, pregnant women, babies, the elderly could not escape the Christian fascist massacre that they withstood. No way out.
Zionist project, Israel relied on what Zeev Jabotinsky referred to as the Iron Wall, or Israel's defense capacity. With a stunning defeat, Israel was no less than desperate. The time had come to find a different target. Tiny Gaza, poorly defended but proudly defiant, fitted the bill.
Now, that was in 1982. This is the second time, and like GDF was mentioning, this did not pan out very well for Israel, as he openly stated, and the Lebanese forces were able to purge
defeat. Military affairs analyst
Israeli
Bill Arkin
forces.
even called it a failure. Israel overestimated the purity of its intelligence and the efficacy of its strategy and technology, and underestimated Hezbollah's skill and resilience. The psychological effect that this loss had on...
This is also partially the reason why I think the Israeli forces regularly choose to do exactly this. Exactly what GDF is talking about, which is like mass bombing campaigns on civilian territory rather than open and active conflict against a standing military with more experience fighting. Hezbollah is a standing military force that has a shit ton of experience fighting in the Middle East. The IDF does not. And this is not my assessment. I'm not being like, oh, they're scared, they're pussies or whatever. The IDF is an internal security force that for many, many years simply no fighting experience whatsoever, with the exception of like some of the special forces that operate in like, refugee camps and whatnot against a armed brigade. Most of the time, IDF doesn't do shit. They're like a military that fucking snipes children and bullies fucking Palestinian people. Like, it's not, you're an occupying police force pretty much. So you're not getting enough. You think you're getting experience, but you're not getting any experience whatsoever in battle. It's like trying to get the fucking NYPD to go fight against militia forces that have been like fighting against ISIS and shit. You know what I mean? By the way, once again, like I said, this also is perfectly explained in the Cy Hirsch piece that I will be covering as well, that just came out. And they're not just simply afraid of their reservists not being able to put up a fight against Hezbollah forces. They are legitimately afraid of their reservists, understandably, not putting up a decent fight in Gaza either, due to the complex tunnel networks that are underneath Gaza, but also the comfortability that an insurgent movement has inside of territory like Gaza, urban, dense territory like Gaza. That's part of the reason why they are raising it to the fucking ground, with hopes that they can drop some, according to Seymour Hersh's analysis, the mother of all bombs and JDAM, specifically bunker buster weapons that will wipe out entire, like a mile of territory, which of course will lead to thousands, depending on whether or not people have evacuated, hundreds of thousands potentially civilian casualties, because they do not want to fight insurgents with their reservist military that they do not have enough confidence in.
On the Israeli establishment was palpable. Since the earliest days of the Zionist project, Israel relied on what Zeev Jabotinsky referred to as the Iron Wall, or Israel's defense capacity, with a stunning defeat.
Like Israel, I would say Israel's, you know how America uses World War II as a justification to do atrocities over and over again, and then they keep getting fucking owned? For Israel, it was the 1967, it was the 6-Day War. Israel's 6-Day War superior military operation, which implemented a first strike against like every single fucking air force in the region and wiped out 90% of the Egyptian air force and every other air force in the fucking region with a very targeted and fast first strike. They were able to basically dominate. They were basically able to dominate and take over territory in the surrounding regions, in the neighboring countries, and that was such a profound success for them, which, by the way, ironically, if you look back, they will admit, like the military commanders at the time will openly admit that they had no real fear that they were going to be destroyed at all. But they use that as a way to propagandize the reason why they have to maintain an apartheid state. But they also utilized the military success of that to say, like, this is the most powerful military in the world. And at the time it was. I mean, it was not the most powerful, but like it was an incredibly successful, incredibly effective military campaign.
Israel was no less than desperate. The time had come to find a different target. Tiny Gaza, poorly defended but proudly defiant, fitted the bill. Despite their defeat, Israel would take one important lesson away from its war with Lebanon: its complete obliteration of the Beirut suburb of Dahiyya, and a new initiative led by former IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot would bear its name.
Yeah.
What happened in the Dahiyya quarter of Beirut in 2006 will happen in every village from which Israel is fired on. This isn't a suggestion. This is a plan that has already been authorized. Israeli pundit Yaron London would write an op-ed gushing about the new strategy. And forgive me for the lengthy quote, but its candidness is frankly quite shocking. The Dahiyya strategy is a term that will become entrenched in our security discourse. Dahiyya is the Shiite quarter in Beirut that our pilots turned into rubble during the Lebanon War. In the next clash with Hezbollah, we won't bother to overtake fortified Hezbollah positions. Rather, we shall destroy Lebanon and won't be deterred by the protests of the world. Thus far, the Dahiyya strategy was not adopted because Israel attempted to cling to the distinction between good Lebanese and bad Lebanese. This is both good and bad. It's bad because north of us, there is a state that is entirely malicious. It's good because there is no longer any need for complicated distinctions. Israeli strategists' new point of view is that Lebanon is an enemy. We have failed in our sophisticated attempts to distinguish between innocent individuals and sinning leaders. Without saying so explicitly, we reached the conclusion that nations are responsible for their leaders' acts. In practical terms,
you know who else does that? The United States of motherfucking America, baby. That's right. That's literally, this is straight up American policy, okay? This is American policy. It's been American policy for so long. And ironically, it's a we learned from you dad moment for Israel as well. Obviously, Israel is you know, a collaborative project of Western imperialists, but ultimately the ways in which Israel's dealt war and violence to its enemies, and comprised of a predominantly civilian population, is identical to the way America has done relentless bombing campaigns in Korea, how America has engaged in relentless bombing campaigns in how America's engaged in relentless bombing campaigns in Vietnam, both South Vietnam and even North Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. This is American policy. Make no mistake. America has always done this, okay? Every single person living on a territory that we have declared a foreign adversary is an enemy. If they don't do that, then they do the other thing where they have CIA involvement, prop up fascists who will then go and kill people door to door at our behest, okay? But as far as like bombing campaigns goes and killing civilians goes, that's a separate issue. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, anywhere where America operates, they always do this. And Israel does it too. It is their policy.
The Palestinians in Gaza are all Khalid Mashal. The Lebanese are all Nasrallah, and the Iranians are all Ahmadinejad. Too bad it did not take hold immediately after the disengagement from Gaza. We deluded ourselves into thinking that the people are not the same as their leaders, and that the people only
Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
care about making a living.
Of course.
Such explicit calls for genocide by a public figure are quite rare in the documentary record, especially ones written with so much clarification. In slightly but barely less explicit terms, retired Major General Giora Island would invoke Dahiyya in his policy prescription for Israel in the event of another war with Lebanon. Serious damage to the Republic of Lebanon, the destruction of homes and infrastructure, and the suffering of hundreds of thousands of people are consequences that can influence Hezbollah's behavior more than anything else. Those of you who have seen my videos on the Korean War will be reminded of the American strategy over the course of that conflict. As the U.S. Air Force put it, the psychological impact of bringing the war to the people is a catalyst that destroys the morale and will to resist. The notorious General Curtis LeMay would lead the bombing campaign in Korea. He very well may have been an early pioneer of the Dahiyya doctrine. There are no innocent civilians. It is their government, and you are fighting a people. You are not trying to fight an armed force anymore, so it doesn't bother me so much to be killing the so-called innocent bystanders. LeMay was only carrying on with his Second World War strategy, where he obliterated scores of Japanese cities and killed hundreds of thousands of people. At least he was self-aware. If we'd lost the war, we'd all have been prosecuted as war criminals. The first battle in which Israel debuted its Dahiyya strategy was the 2008 invasion of Gaza, what the Israelis called Operation Cast Lead. Israel's interior minister recommended that the IDF should decide on a neighborhood in Gaza and level it. And in the words of Israel's deputy prime minister, it should be possible to destroy Gaza so that they will understand not to mess with us. It is a great opportunity to demolish thousands of houses of all the terrorists, so they will think twice before they launch rockets. They should be razed to the ground, so thousands of houses tunnels, and industries will be demolished. Following the war, the United Nations released a report of their fact-finding mission on the Gaza conflict. The mission concludes that what occurred was a deliberately...
What do you do when the entire population wants you dead like the Japanese? I love when people just still do that, by the way. Also, people who perform terrorist attacks are declared as our enemy. Yeah. Brother, there has been so much writing on the fact that Hiroshima and Nagasaki was not done to like do an unconditional surrender, especially considering that like that unconditional surrender did not even happen, and that the emperor was still restored after the fact, and it was more so just to flex our military might, okay, at a time when a conditional surrender was already being propped up. Specifically, some of those terms were given to the Japanese anyway. And it was very likely that even an unconditional surrender could have happened if they waited for a little bit, because of the ongoing endless brutality of the firebombing campaigns. Many historians have written about this so many fucking times. I do not know what to tell you about it if you still have this opinion where it's like, well, what about the entire population wants you dead like the Japanese? Absolutely zero people in this community will tell you that the Japanese were doing good things in World War II. As a matter of fact, I have a more critical approach to Japanese war crimes than the American State Department did at the time. The American Defense Department did at the time. I believe that they should have been convicted of their war crimes, those responsible for the war crimes. Instead, America just went in and hand-waved away said war crimes, hopefully so they could get the secret materials of all the things that they learned by engaging in horrifying experiments akin to Nazi experiments that took place in Manchuria. And we used some of that germ warfare information that we got from Unit 731 specifically, which Japan still to this day does not acknowledge, to use on Korea. So, something to consider.
Disproportionate attack designed to punish, humiliate, and terrorize a civilian population. The destruction of food supply installations, water sanitation systems, concrete factories, and residential houses was the result of a deliberate and systematic policy to make the daily process of living and dignified living more difficult for the civilian population. The repeated failure to distinguish between combatants and civilians appears to the mission to have been the result of deliberate guidance issued to soldiers. Despite all of the open Israeli posturing prior to the war, the backlash to the fact-finding mission report was so great that it resulted in a recantation by its principal author, Richard Goldstone, in a Washington Post article. 2014's Operation Protective Edge would, amazingly, be even more destructive than Cast Lead. Amnesty International roundly condemned Israel's deliberate destruction and targeting of civilian buildings and property on a large scale, carried out without military necessity. I've never seen such massive destruction ever before. In the ensuing carnage, Israel would destroy 22 schools and target UN-run schools being used to shelter civilians, including a UN elementary school in Beit Hanun, which killed 13, a UN boys' school in Rafah, killing 12, and a UN girls' elementary school in Jabalia, killing 20. The precise location of the Jabalia Elementary Girls' School was communicated to the Israeli army 17 times. What's more, Israel possessed GPS coordinates of all the UN facilities that it targeted, but still attacked them with artillery and precision-guided missiles. UN Relief and Works Agency sent twice daily communications to Israel's coordinator of the government activities in the territories and Coordination and Liaison Administration.
By the way, the UN Reliefs and Works Agency, I hope you guys understand one thing here, is an agency that is like in the Near East, Palestine refugees in the Near East, is an agency dedicated specifically to Israeli war crimes and having to deal with Israeli war crimes. So there is an entire arm dedicated to Palestinian refugees. Like this is Their job is to try to make things work through the fucking rubble that Israel leaves every single time they want to mow the lawn.
Informing them of the global positioning system coordinates of premises currently being used as designated emergency shelters. Israel also destroyed or damaged 17 hospitals, 56 primary care facilities, and 45 ambulances. Gaza's only rehabilitation center, Al-Wafa Hospital, was also completely destroyed. Israel fomented a media blackout and even banned human rights organizations from the Gaza Strip during the war and even afterward.
I wonder why they did that.
But the sheer scale of the carnage would inevitably be exposed. And in the end, over 2,200 Gazans lost their lives.
The more phones and the more electricity and the more opportunities you have, it's like body cameras on cops. You know what I mean? Israelis used to call it Pallywood, as I said, a gross term to claim that the Palestinians that were being killed in the hands of Israeli forces were simply being killed in a telegenic way. You know, it's just, I mean, here it is. There it is. Look. When cameras captured the IDF murdering Mohammed in 2000, Israelis coined the term Pallywood. This is, remember the father who was filmed protecting his 12-year-old son, Mohammed Al-Dora, from a rain of Israeli bullets before losing him 23 years ago? He lost 2 other sons in an Israeli airstrike on his house in Gaza today. When cameras captured the idea of murdering Muhammad in 2000, Israelis coined the term Pallywood as a form of genocide denialism, since Palestinians could finally show Israel's crimes to the world. This is why they turned off the internet and electricity in Gaza. This is why they also tell the Human Rights Watch that they can't fucking go into Gaza when they're, you know, dealing their death and destruction. I think it might help to explain what telegenically dead means. Telegenic means like you're sexy for the camera. Okay?
Lives, of which 1,500 were civilians, 550 of them children. Comparatively, 73...
Telegraph reports, Israel vows to destroy Lebanon if war spreads. UK and US warn over escalation of the Middle East crisis as jets bomb northern neighbor. Israel, as far as I understand it, is also dropping, has been dropping bombs in Lebanon. That would be insane if they turned around and pulled Hezbollah into a two-front war. I don't know why they would do that.
3 Israelis lost their lives, of which 6 were civilians, including 1 child. In another stark example of the insane firepower of the Israeli army, just 1 house in Israel was destroyed during the war, compared to 18,000 in Gaza. And thus, Dahiyya was fulfilled yet again. Anthony Kordsman of the Center for Strategic and International Studies would write about the lengths that Israeli officials would go to appear disproportionate and perhaps even unstable. One official went so far as to state that Israel had to make its enemies feel it was crazy. I need your help. This channel relies on donations and patrons. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support my channel further, subscribe to my Patreon, where you'll have access to several exclusive...
Yeah, GDF is the best. He makes great videos. Yeah, Netanyahu's telegenically dead comment is grotesque but not original. Back when Glenn Greenwald had a fucking brain, when he used to write for The Intercept. They want to pile up as many civilian dead as they can. They use telegenically dead Palestinians for their cause. That's what he said. They want the more dead, the better. That's what Benjamin Netanyahu said on CNN, addressing worldwide sympathy for the civilian victims of Israeli violence in Gaza. Old Glenn. Oh boy. All right, let's look at some of this nonsensical bullshit from the consistent propaganda going on. Now that Israeli and U.S. officials have pivoted from sheer retaliation to their old human shields excuse, I debunked that argument in 5 points published during last Gaza onslaught.
Point 1. Israel provides no evidence that there are human shields. So
that's not true. Sometimes they will there'll be like one thing from like 2009 or something that they'll always point to, where they'll be like, well, we actually did see weapons in one of these facilities, so it's actually justifiable that the entire Gaza Strip is armed to the fucking gills with weapons. Sometimes they edit videos. That's also true. You know,
so far, the best they can do is share these photoshopped images. See, the building is red. That means Hamas is there.
After providing advanced warnings to civilians in time to evacuate, IDF fighters just struck that multi-story building containing Hamas military intelligence assets. The building contains civilian media offices, which Hamas hides behind and deliberately uses as human shields. Fucking bullshit.
You know, for all of Israel's sophisticated surveillance technology with eyes over every single inch of Gaza, you'd think that they'd be able to produce more than cartoons. And
Israel uses weapons to protect its civilians. Hamas uses civilians to protect its weapons. Hamas puts Palestinian civilians in the line of fire. This is PragerU, bro. Look at this. It's IDF propaganda, but it is basically fucking PragerU. It's so funny. God, I just, it's so laughable if it wasn't so gross and inhumane. You know what I mean?
And doctored graphics. In fact, the only proof they have provided so far are fake videos of Hamas rockets in residential areas. On May 15th, the IDF published a video of an Israeli training operation using a Hamas decoy that claimed it was an actual Hamas missile launcher near civilians. In another lie, Netanyahu's spokesman tweeted a video claiming it was Hamas firing rockets next to an apartment building. Turns out this was a video from 2018 in Syria. So where's the actual...
Why is this stream so biased? There are a lot, actually. Brother, what do you mean? I am literally... Yes, I am biased, okay? I'm biased. I'm biased. I'm biased against killing babies, okay? I don't think it's right when Hamas militants do it. I don't think it's right when Israel does it by the tenfold, okay? Yeah, sorry. I know. I'm a bit biased towards baby murder. It's kind of fucked up. I know. Are you not? Is that the argument here? You're like, no, you don't understand. These babies needed to be murdered. They're fucking, they're child shields. They're baby shields. Fuck.
Actual evidence. If they cannot provide any, their claims must be investigated and brought to a trial. Even if there was evidence that Israel was hitting legitimate military targets, it still is illegal to kill such an outrageous amount of civilians. And you can't legally blow up a hospital, even...
I left those comments about Jewish minority yesterday, and I would like to clarify that I was in no way referring to Palestine and Palestinians. I saw some comments on another video about it, and I don't want to spread hate or misinformation. Jews live for much longer in harmony with others, so my fear is irrational. Was just chatting. I'm glad. We love a king that engages in some self-reflection. You know what I'm saying?
Even if there are militants nearby. Either way, Israel should not be allowed to be above the law. At these
That's the other side, is like, even if there are human shields, like, you can't kill them. Like, why are we jumping over that point? It blows my fucking mind that we just jump over that point. You cannot kill the fucking human shield. Like, that's bad guy shit. That's not good guy shit.
Point 2. We shouldn't take Israel's claims of human shields at face value, because they have an extensive history of lying about it.
It's true.
I think the most irrefutable example are their killings at Gaza's Great March of Return, which we documented in our film, Gaza Fights for Freedom. At this Great March, Israeli snipers directly targeted and killed 183 unarmed demonstrators, including 35 innocent children at these protests. Journalists marked press, medics performing medical aid, a man in a wheelchair, and so many more. But Israel said they were all human shields.
Yeah. So like, what? How can you ever believe the human shield rhetoric after they fucking blew up the Associated Press building, brother? Or after they have time and time again lied openly and been disproven openly? After the 7,000th time, I'll be like, okay, dude, well, I don't think these are human shields. I don't think you should shoot them even if they were, but I don't even believe that there are human shields in this circumstance. I think you're just killing Palestinians. And it's not like they're hiding it. That's what blows my mind. Look, this is not 2018, okay? This is not 2018. This is not 2020. This is 2023, okay? This is 2023. The fucking officials are openly saying we must raise Gaza. They've shut off all the fucking electricity and all the power and all the food. Like, what argument do we have here? Sorry, they were asking for it is like a ridiculous fucking take. I don't believe that it is acceptable to kill human shields regardless, but I don't believe the human shield propaganda either. And also, they don't even do that propaganda anymore. And you guys are still, some of you are still in here being like, yeah, well, you know, what about the human shields argument? And it's like, but they're not even making that anymore. They have starved out Gaza for the past 3-4 days now. Water has run out. There's no fucking water in Gaza. They had to open up water in the south so they can forcibly move the civilian population into the south after they told the civilian population to evacuate to the south and blew up one of the fucking convoys.
It was all legitimate. Here's where they really exposed themselves. According to international law, human shield applies to civilians as collateral damage when you're targeting military forces in combat. But at the Great March protests, there were no militants, nobody shooting at Israelis, nobody with weapons, no targets remotely connected to military operations. So if all of those children, medics, journalists, and disabled people were human shields, who were they shielding? Even when they killed celebrated female medic Razan al-Najjar, they released a propaganda video saying she was a human shield. But shielding what? Under no circumstances would killing that many civilians at an unarmed protest, with the defense that they were human shields for non-existent military targets, hold up for a second in a war crimes tribunal. Today, Israel relies on the fog of war to make this claim seem possible. But just 2 years ago, Israel showed an irrefutable pattern of lying about human shields, and now they have zero credibility. Hamas offices. Point 3. According to Israel's own definition of human shield, every man, woman, and child in Gaza is a human shield. They claim that anyone in the vicinity of not only Hamas missile sites, but Hamas offices, Hamas individuals, is a human shield.
Yo, Haas, during this discourse, have you experienced much anti-Semitism in the name of anti-colonialism fight and vice versa, racism in the name of so-called solidarity for Israel? I mean, I think we've already basically forcibly expelled so many of the anti-Semites and all of their fucking all of their sock accounts that it's hard to tell you conclusively if there was more anti-Semitism. There were plenty of anti-Semites that we have banned because there are always so many people who love to be like, yeah, so what do you think? Why do you think the media is protecting the Jews so much? Am I right? And it's like classic anti-Semitic bullshit. Okay. And we banned them, but I wouldn't say that it has been more than back when I was like talking about Kanye being anti-Semitic, for example. I feel like that was like every single other instance where we've talked about anti-Semitism occurring. I would say that we've banned more anti-Semites. There is definitely a lot more Islamophobia occurring as well. I'm sure that anti-Semitism has skyrocketed too, certainly, in this process. It's just that we're so fucking thorough. We're so thorough with anti-Semitism and the way we deal with it swiftly that, haven't seen too much of it in here or more of it.
This includes Hamas members who are sleeping at home with their families and the surrounding houses. This includes anyone within a mile of any Hamas institution, which is literally all of the 2 million people who live there. Look, Hamas is the government of Gaza.
Yeah.
Therefore, any civilian infrastructure is considered Hamas.
Yeah. The hospital says Hamas outside of it because Hamas runs the hospital. It's the health ministry. And then motherfuckers go, well, shouldn't have made Hamas the health ministry. It is a disgusting way to justify civilian murder. Okay, that's it.
Infrastructure, everything from transportation to healthcare. So anyone in the vicinity of those things or people can be killed with impunity. Even Israel's Minister of Defense confirmed that this is indeed their view, stating on May 18th that, quote, no person, area, or neighborhood in Gaza is immune from airstrikes. How is it in any way acceptable that Israel can categorize every human being in Gaza a legitimate target? And if you take Israel's logic far enough, they could kill everyone in Gaza, and it would be justified.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing that now. This is an old video, by the way, from Abby Martin, which is, of course, still incredibly prescient because, they're doing it, and they've only escalated it harder.
Point 4. If you accept Israel's definition of human shield, then you have to accept that Israel is using human shields as well. armed Israeli soldiers are everywhere among civilian areas. Not only that, but their military bases are nestled in densely populated residential areas. For example, the Israeli Defense Forces' main headquarters is smack dab in the middle of a residential sector of Tel Aviv and a major shopping center. Does anyone accuse Israel of using human shields? In another example, the Israeli army...
Would anyone think it's fucking fair if Hamas somehow figured out a way to bomb the fuck out of that and reduce it to rubble? Would anyone think that that's appropriate? We know what people's perspective is. We saw it. Round condemnation. Understandable for the acts that the militants engaged in on October 7th. Round condemnation from the entire world, which is perfectly fair and perfectly understandable. Okay? However, there is no such condemnation for Israel's actions. It's crazy. Because people do not see Muslims as human beings.
Army broadcasts from a residential apartment tower with antennas on the roof. If Hamas leveled that building, does anyone doubt it would be deemed a war crime? What we have here is a double standard. Israel wants the human shield defense for them to be any civilian they kill. But for any civilian killed by Hamas, it's a war crime. You know, the purpose of international laws of war is to create a standard that's applied to all sides equally. But Israel and the United States have a different view, that the rules only apply to their enemies. That's only because of... Point 5. If everyone in Gaza is a legitimate human shield, that's only because of Israel's own design. This is a situation of Israel's own making. Israel drew the borders, and Israel refuses to let anyone leave. To leave Gaza, you must get approval from the Israeli government, and the government will almost always say no. So what are people supposed to do who want to remove themselves from the carnage? They have literally nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Israel has made Gaza, in every sense of the term, an open-air prison. They trap 2 million civilians in this tiny strip of land. Then they bomb their neighborhoods and say, well, they shouldn't have been there. The mountain of civilian dead has to be looked at through the perspective of the Israeli blockade and the inability of anyone to escape. Resistance forces in Gaza have nowhere else to go to. Gaza's self-defense capabilities are confined to this heavily populated area. And Israel has intentionally made Gaza unlivable. The only way Gaza is able to exert pressure on Israel is by firing rockets.
Why won't they let people leave? Doesn't it work towards their agenda? Great question. Wait, is Gaza a part of Israel? Why did they have their own government? Wait, what? Why won't they let the people leave? Doesn't it work towards their agenda? You mean like, why won't Israel let the people of Gaza leave, right? I think you're understanding certain things now, I hope. There's two different reasons. One, people don't want to leave. When they're under a bombing campaign, there's plenty of people that don't want to leave because they know if they leave, they will never have their home. So they'll die on their feet inside of their houses rather than die months later in a fucking refugee camp in gruesome conditions. So that's one of the reasons why some people choose to not leave and to stay. It is their land after all, and they have seen what happens when they do leave, never to return ever again, never allowed to return ever again. As far as, wait, is Gaza a part of Israel? Why do they have their own government? I'm shocked that you've been a 38-month subscriber, and even today we've described the government of Gaza and its inception and how it was designed after Israel forcibly pulled out of Gaza, specifically so they could start their bombing campaign in Gaza.
Rockets. If they peacefully protest their conditions, they're massacred just the same.
The other part of it is that they didn't just take the 8,000 settlers that were living in Gaza, which was still supposed to be Palestinian land according to international rules in our, rule-based liberal order, right? Supposedly. And then they just relocated them to the fucking West Bank. They just took them out of there and put them in the West Bank anyway. So they kept settling. Settlers can't stop settling. They're like, oh, fuck, I love settling, dude.
If they do nothing, Israel continues to blockade them, erode their living conditions.
Didn't answer the question about why Israel doesn't want Palestinians to leave. Hello? They want to fucking kill them. They want to kill them. They want to kill them super hard. They want to fucking bomb them super duper hard and then allow the humanitarian corridor to take foot so that they can just turn around and say, look how humanitarian we are, that we did a humanitarian corridor. We put them on fucking trains and moved them into a different area, is an argument that would not work for Nazi Germany, and it should not work for Israel, okay? The humanitarian thing to do in that situation is to stop bombing. What the fuck? I empathize with Palestinians, but the trump card of whataboutisms is ultimately that Hamas wants the death and destruction of Israel and the Jews. You'll never be able to gain enough sympathy and real change until Hamas changes their stance or is removed. Dude, what the fuck are you saying? Flip the argument on its head. Israel's open fucking take on the matter is full-scale death and destruction to the Palestinian population, and it's not even just like their sentiment of wanting to build, their sentiment around wanting to build a Jewish ethno-state, but also their actions, okay? It is fucking ridiculous. And also, you're saying this because you're unfamiliar with the Hamas charter changing in 2017, which is fine. I mean, you don't have to believe it, but you can't run with this argument, okay? And because when I bring up the fact that Hamas in 2017 changed the charter and liberalized it to say that they are for a two-state solution and that they are for living peacefully amongst Christians, Jews, and Muslims across the board, you will turn around and say, oh, really? Do they want to do that? Because they keep fucking bombing Israel. Doesn't seem like they want to do that. And that's precisely why it's like an idiotic argument to entertain to begin with, okay? Israel doesn't have a creed stating so. Brother, look around, okay? Look around. The notion that Hamas is in power in Gaza and therefore the Palestinians deserve what they get is fucking psychotic, okay? It is psychotic. It's bloodthirst. It is not just. It is not moral. Why do you try to defend it? What the fuck?
While ethnically cleansing the rest of their land. Israel has made it so the only leverage Gaza has to get any change is using the one weapon it has. Besides, Gaza has the right to self-defense under international law. And contrary to what Israel claims, the current round of fighting was started by Israel, not Hamas, when they deployed criminal violence against Al-Aqsa and Sheikh Jarrah. And right at the outset, on May 12th, Hamas offered a ceasefire to Israel. Israel rejected it because they wanted to keep going, despite their rhetoric of only wanting the rockets to stop. So if Israel's going to keep bombing, Gaza has no choice but to fight back. And that in turn becomes the excuse for Israel massacring so-called human shields.
Show me specifically what they said is racist type beat. Yeah, 100%. You know why? It's so identical to the arguments that reactionary weirdos fucking put forward. Okay? You want to know why? I love the idea of like claiming that Israel does not have an interest in ethnic displacement of Palestinian people since when the entire nation state's development started with ethnic displacement of Palestinian people. And it's pretty funny to say that, but the reason why it's identical to the show me specifically where they said that is racist, did they ever say the N-word type argument, is because Israel is a fascist project. That's it. That's why. Because you cannot have an apartheid state that is not inherently fascist. You cannot have a religious ethno-state that is not inherently fucking fascist. The maintenance of an apartheid state is always going to be violent because violence is required for the maintenance of an apartheid state. That's it. And there are plenty of examples of Ben-Gurion and numerous other fucking leaders and founding fathers, including Theodore fucking Herzl, who has said that this is a colonial project. So I don't know why you're fucking coming in here if you don't know the point. If you don't know what the fuck like the founding creed is of the development of an Israeli nation state being a colonial project when the founding fathers of Israel themselves said that it was so, I don't know who you're arguing against. You're just arguing out of ignorance. So ask yourself, Why is it that the first fucking thing you say, why is it that in all of your endless ignorance of this situation, why are you still so defensive? Why are you defensively posturing? Seriously, Sex Machine 69, a beacon of shining light in this fucking chat, a brilliant interlocutor. Ask yourself, why is it that you reflexively defend this without full knowledge? Why are you defensively posturing? It makes no sense. New Philosopher King, Sex Machine. Yeah. Not only did the Hamas charter change, okay, we showed you through historic documents time and time again that even Hamas, which I think is a fundamentalist Islamist project, of course, I know that is the case, which of course was also developed and propped up by the Israeli state, but that's a different story for a different time. Okay? I'm on mobile and this is defense, this is reality. I'm focused on the reality of change. No, you're not. If you say Israel doesn't have a creed stating that it is supposed to be designed around ethnically displacing Palestinians, then you are literally the most oblivious person I've ever fucking seen. Not only are you silly because you have not heard Theodor Herzl himself directly mention this, not only have you not seen many other Zionist founding fathers mention that this is supposed to be a colonialist project, you also are oblivious to the reality of the matter at hand. Over the course of the past 75 years, Israel has maintained a brutal occupation that quite literally is by everyone on the planet's objective measurements an apartheid state. How can you deny this? How can you deny what the Human Rights Watch and the Amnesty organization is saying, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and numerous other fucking NGOs? How can you deny the reality of Israel refusing to go by the UN Charter, even though UN is supposedly the reason why Israel exists to begin with? It's ridiculous. Don't fucking try to argue against someone else, loser. Explain what your position is. How can you defend this? Herzl, it is not in your accustomed line. It doesn't involve Africa, but a piece of Asia Minor, not Englishmen, but Jews. How then do I happen to turn to you, since this is an out-of-the-way matter for you? How indeed? Because it is something colonial. Theodor Herzl proudly said Zionism is something colonial in a letter he wrote to Cecil Rhodes. He literally used the term himself, you disingenuous hack. He's shitting on the Mosaic magazine argument in 2018 when, yes, calling Israel a settler colonial project is anti-Semitic, said Ben Cohen. History is anti-Semitic, I guess, when you fucking adequately explain what other people have. That's insane. Anti-Zionist Israelis may now possibly be jailed, have their property seized for both the dissemination of information that undermines the morale of Israel's soldiers and residents in the face of the enemy, serves as a basis for enemy propaganda, including spreading the enemy's propaganda messages or info that aids the enemy in its war against Israel. That's fucking nuts. What the fuck? Likud minister formulates emergency regulations to imprison citizens who harm national morale. What the fuck? Oh my God. This is exactly what I have said time and time again. If you are a part of the Zionist project in the maintenance of an apartheid state, even if you are personally a liberal Zionist, it will inevitably come back to haunt you. This is how this works. Holy shit. That's fucking insane. Ben-Gurion, first prime minister of Israel. We must expel the Arabs and take their places. Not at all. I'm talking about the reality of change. How is that defense? You can't get enough global support for the change you or the Palestinians want with Hamas in power unless there's a drastic change. Bitch, no one is saying Hamas should be the fucking leading charter or that they've done. Dude, shut the fuck up. What are you saying right now? You put that position in my mouth as opposed to the reality. For the past week, I have talked about the historic reasons as to how Hamas rose to power, how Israel propped Hamas up, specifically as an effort to thwart any kind of Palestinian national identity movement. You are such a fucking asshole for coming in here, being oblivious to the reality of how Israel is a settler colonial project, both in practice, but also even in the theoretical formation of the fucking state. And now you're turning around and making it seem like there's people in here saying Hamas is like the real reason why is Palestinians can't find liberation is Hamas. Shut the fuck up. That is not the real reason. You so dumb, Haas. He's talking reality. It's ridiculous. Oh, they can't get global support for the change or you or the Palestinians want. That's so crazy. Do you want to tell me what level of fucking global support existed for Yasser Arafat? Was there a lot of global support in that circumstance? Was there a lot of global support after 1948? When was there global support for the Palestinians? At the most, you had Arab nationalist movements that failed dramatically. And also, even in that circumstance, their actions were against Israel in general, not necessarily for the emancipation of Palestinians. And they mistreated Palestinians too. People forget the Jordanian military killed more fucking Palestinians in the occupation than Israelis did at that time frame. Fuck out of here. I'm talking reality here. No, you're not. You are oblivious to the reality because you have no historical frame of reference. You've just been fed propaganda after propaganda. And instead of like doing a deeper dive and trying to fucking comprehend what actually happened on the ground, you just come in here and try to fucking lay the blame on Palestinians.